Thank you, Mr. Cole. And now the opening argument from Ms. Harris.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Justin Carr tragically lost his life. Tragically and unnecessarily. But that tragedy was then followed by another tragedy. That tragedy was followed by the fact that the state and CMPD, instead of seeking truth, they sought a conviction. They sought a conviction. And now it's up to you all, as members of the jury and the finders of fact, to find the facts and to find truth. There's two sides to every story, but only one truth. And now it's up to you all to find that truth and speak truth to power. We talked a lot in jury selection about reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt. They have to prove their case to you beyond a reasonable doubt. Every single element of this crime, they have to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt, but they won't be able to do that because they did not seek the truth. Now let's talk about what reasonable doubt is. Reasonable doubt is not, oh, this guy seems like a bad guy, like they got up here and tried to do, pointing to my client, spewing lies. What they tried to do was paint my client as a bad guy. But that doesn't make you a murderer. We're talking about first-degree murder. If convicted, he will spend his life in prison and he will die in prison. So the truth is not only important for my client, but important for the Carr family. Beyond a reasonable doubt. Not it seems like he did it. Not it kind of suggests that he did it. No. Beyond it. If there's any hole, any reasonable hole in what they try to present to you, they have not proven to you beyond a reasonable doubt that my client committed this crime. Now, let's talk a little bit about how we got here. How did we get here? How did we end up to that night? We got here because of a police shooting. And I agree with Mr. Cole. People came out, and they came out to do their civic duty. They came out to protest. They came out to do their constitutional right. But what happened? Things got out of control. We were everywhere. Charlotte was national news. CNN, Fox, Good Day America. They were talking about the havoc that Charlotte had become. And on top of that, on top of the havoc that was already going on top of, as Mr. Cole testified, tear gas, pepper balls. You'll hear testimony from officers about civilians throwing things that exploded. You'll hear testimony from their own witnesses about explosives being used that night. Mr. Cole left that out. And he'll leave out a lot of things throughout this trial. But you all were selected because you're smart enough to pay attention. How did we get here? We got here because of a police-involved shooting. It got out of control that night. The National Guard was called in. Officers in full riot gear surrounding the city. Out of control. On top of it, a civilian was killed. And it couldn't happen here. It couldn't happen in Charlotte. This could not be the Charlotte that was hosting All-Star. This could not be the Charlotte that was bidding for the RNC. Pay attention to what was going on, the surrounding circumstances. Mr. Cole wants to point you to things, but he wants to leave lots of things out. It could not happen in Charlotte, it could not happen here, and it could not happen now, and this had to go away. It had to go away, and it had to go away fast, and when things have to go away fast, you rush. Officers will get up here and they'll testify about all the things that they allege to have, but they won't testify about what they don't have, what they didn't do. They didn't do gunshot residue testing. You won't hear any testimony about that. You won't hear any testimony about fingerprinting. Interesting, all the things they found in his house, but did not do fingerprinting, did not do any blood spatter. None of those things were done because they wanted to seek a conviction. They did not want to speak truth. Mr. Cole talked about the alleged confession. He made it clear that officers were going to get what they wanted. The thing they told my client would happen. He didn't tell them. By Mr. Cole's own statements, they told him what happened. They told him he killed somebody. They told him he had a gun. They told him in that tiny room with 2 officers touching him, talking to him about what happened, telling him, you did this, we know you did it, yeah, you did it. They put excerpts on that screen and left out important parts of those conversations. Pay attention to what they don't show you and remember how we got here. Don't let them lead you to the conviction and not the truth. They're going to tell you all these things and leave out everything that they don't have. They're going to leave out the fact that the medical examiner could have retrieved what was left in Justin Carr's brain, but it was too difficult. Too difficult? For a case of this nature, for a man's life, it was too difficult? You hear him say that it was like finding a needle in a haystack, but it wasn't a haystack. It was a man's life we're talking about. But they didn't care because they wanted a conviction. They didn't want the truth. They will continue to paint my client in a bad light. They'll have Ken Bowden get on the stand and testify. But just like his charges, he's a fraud. He is a fraud. And no, he doesn't have a deal yet. Not yet. But he's hoping for one. He does not have a deal yet because his charges aren't little state charges, they're federal charges. So you better believe when he gets on that stand, he's hoping for a deal. Let's talk about his credibility. He'll testify about what my client was wearing that night, but he got that wrong. Just like he got wrong what happened that night. Because he wasn't with him when it happened. He was not with him when it happened. But the state wants you to believe that this fraud is credible. You all are the finder of fact. The Carr family and my client is counting on you to seek truth and not conviction. To show the state, to show the world, to show the media, to show everyone that if you are going to strip a man of his freedom, his constitutional right to freedom, that you better bring your A game. And you better not leave me with any doubt. If I'm going to strip that man of his freedom, I will leave here without a doubt, without any reasonable doubt in my mind that he did this. And you won't use me to seek convictions because we seek truth. And my client is begging you. The Carr family is begging you to find my client not guilty and speak truth to power. Find him not guilty of first-degree murder and felon in possession of a firearm. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Let's go ahead with the first witness, and then we'll take a break. I haven't forgotten our morning break yet. Does anybody need one right now? Anybody? Okay, let's go ahead with our first witness.